Welcome back, everyone. We're into week 4, which I cannot believe, right? The semester's kind of going at a steady pace, but we're going to cover a topic that many of us are familiar with, but I would suggest that we can always learn something new. I've been reading literature reviews and doing them for a good number of years, and every time I think about this topic or talk about it, I always learn something new. And the first thing I want you to think about when we go into this, we always think of a literature review as something we do when we start a paper. So it's part of my introduction of when I'm writing a paper, or it's an assignment, or it's an annotated bibliography. But actually, you can publish a literature review, and it is a research study. It is a tertiary study, meaning you're synthesizing or summarizing existing literature. And just as a quick reminder, a primary study that you would conduct would be collecting your own data. So you go out in the field and you interview people, or you do a survey or focus group. Secondary data would be that you get existing data. Maybe you get outcomes data from your hospital, or you get centers of Medicare and Medicaid files. You get some data sets from them, and that would be secondary. But tertiary is really unique. It's that your data, in this case, when you're doing a lit review as a type of study, your data, they're plural, your data are actually the articles, right? The summary, the comparison of articles. So it's a little bit different. And we'll talk about that more as we go through the slides. So let's go to the next slide. That you all know, if I said to you, I'd like you to do a lit review, and you know what it is. It's basically a scientific or structured way of collecting the research that's been done on a topic, right? The first step, it's the first step in kind of formalizing your study. So, you want to think about when you write your lit review, when you create or use a lit review as part of an introduction, you're really saying a couple of things. Either yes, I'm aware of the body of literature that talked about healthcare outcomes or quality access to care, that exists, and I'm well versed in it. Or you're saying, I'm aware of that literature and I'm jumping off at a different point. I think we need to study a different direction. Or you're saying there are a lot of bodies of literature, maybe some about like good patient outcomes and some about quality healthcare practices, but nobody's ever blended them or seen them together. So the lit review is really foundational because you're showing that you're aware of what's out there, but you're also giving the reader kind of a little idea of what you're doing that's different, or if you are, replicating a study, right? So the lit review is kind of foundational. And these are the things I was saying. Your goal in the literature review is to acknowledge the existing literature, right? Sum it up. So what do we know in the field about this topic? Where are there gaps, right? Where are the gaps of knowledge? If there are contradictory findings. So, some people feel that this intervention is more therapeutic. Other groups feel this intervention is more therapeutic. Here's what I'm going to test in my research, or I'm going to prove in my article, or attempt to prove. And then you need to situate yourself in the larger body of knowledge, right? Again, think what I was talking about in the first slide, right? I know what went before me, and I know where more of my work is going to fit in this. And I want to just give you a word about gray literature. So gray literature, academic peer-reviewed journals are what we use. And when we search databases, particularly Medline or any of the databases that are offered through Cook Library, we often say scholarly peer-reviewed. But for us, right, as applied researchers in the field, we sometimes dip into the gray literature. And the gray literature basically means it's a .gov, right? So a .gov report. And I'm going to show you really quickly. I went over this with sorry, give me one more second. Let me move my, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go just to a Google search, but let's say that I'm searching health care staffing, statistics, right? You can do .gov. And if you do that .gov, this is gray literature. So if you notice, all of these extensions are .gov, and that's what you want. All right, so this is gray literature that's approved to use, not as a source per se, but as a source of statistics. So if you wanted to talk about any let's see, I don't know what this is. Let's see, federal government spending on healthcare. So let's say that you were very interested in spending on healthcare and you want to quote some statistics, you could easily pull it. This is for the Centers of Medicaid, right? Or Medicare and Medicaid, we used to call it, right? .gov. You could use these statistics. It's not, it could open your literature review. It could give support for the reason why you're studying a topic. But again, it's gray literature. Why? Because these are not peer reviewed by other people, other scholars, other experts. These are produced by .gov entities. So let me show you this again. I found it really, really useful. So let's say we want to look at, let's see, health. I'm sorry, I can't spell. Health care quality, and then we do colon, and then we do .gov. .gov will bring you those gray reports. Okay, so you all know AHRQ, as we used to call them. So if you wanted to pull some statistics about anything related to quality and healthcare, you could use some statistics here as a source, but it's gray literature. So I'm sorry to jump out a little bit of the topic, but I thought this was a really good tool. Let me go back to the slides one moment. Oh, sorry, not those slides. So again, when you're reviewing the literature, you're using these peer-reviewed scholarly articles. You can bring in any of those .gov pieces to give you statistics, and we call them gray literature because they have value, they are important, but they're not vetted through that peer review process, that external reviewer process. Get back in. Let me share screen. Sorry, guys. My computer is having a good time today. Okay, here we go. Okay, let me grab this. Let me just make sure I'm getting the right one. Here we go. We're back in. But I did want to jump out a bit and you know, and reach out and show you that piece because I think it's valuable. Sometimes we need statistics for our particular area, and they may not be current in the literature because it takes time to publish a research article. So if you need some literature that's in some stats that are in that gray, that kind of a gray lit zone, you can definitely reach out that way. Let's get back to the slideshow. Okay. And again, right? It's a formal review, meaning it has some structure, right? That a lit review, when you read a lit review, you expect some things, you expect to know kind of what's current. So if you're talking about the history of affordable care in the United States, or how can we modify affordable care to really make it affordable, or something like that, you may start and traditionally go with the background. So what is this policy? When was it developed? Where is the application of it, right? We expect to see some literature about the topic that you're looking at, and then how do they relate to each other? If you're talking about a new intervention that's not been tested, we expect that you talk about some prior interventions that work, the current intervention that you may be testing, and then why it's important. So this literature review piece is kind of, it's in the introduction, but it kind of sets the stage. And even if you're presenting to colleagues. So again, I used to work as a project manager, and one of my projects was a hip fracture. It was a large hip fracture project in 3 or 4 hospitals at the time. And anytime I would bring in an interviewing technique, or I wanted to do some team training, or we did a functional assessment measure, I had to bring in some background to justify why I wanted that team training approach, or why we should do that functional assessment measure, or what was the meaning of it, and how did I learn about it, and why would it be good for our clients. At that time, we called them patients. They were inpatient, so inpatients in the hospital. So you always need to know where your work fits in the larger scope of like research that's out there and literature that's out there. And it differs a little bit. Remember we talked about this false quantitative qualitative divide in, and the way you use a lit review for each will differ. So for the quantitative review, it's probably what you're used to, right? The lit review, when you talk about all of the research that's gone on before, it can help you generate a really detailed research question. So I'll give you an example with the practitioner study during COVID that we did. We talked about all the experiences and all the research that was published about people who are working during COVID. And then our question came for our research study, which was mixed methods, but our question was, the general research question read a little bit more qualitatively. It was, so how can we understand both the personal and the professional experiences of practitioners who work with older adults during the COVID-19 pandemic? And then we gave a time frame, right? So we felt that what was missing from the prior literature was the personal narrative, the real experience of people. And although we collected survey data and interview data, we found that a lot of both the survey data and the interview data gave us things that we never heard about. And you could make a hypothesis that organizations and companies that had better team management styles before COVID did better, right, after COVID or during COVID than organizations that did not have a management team in place. And we found sort of that especially with the switch to virtual, those that had more flexibility with employees in terms of work type had a much easier time when the employees were switching to becoming hybrid or virtual. So, right, that's a hypothesis. In qualitative work, you may not generate a hypothesis at the end of your lit review. Think back to my example. You may end with the question saying, based on prior literature, we feel that personal experiences of providers were not given enough attention. So therefore, the goal of the study or the research question is to understand from a personal point of view, what were the experiences of practitioners working during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So quantitative will generate a more detailed research question and may create a hypothesis or objective. Qualitative, you can stop at the research question. And you have to think that there are a lot of ways to write about background, right? If you're writing a report, and I'm thinking in my early days with HIV, when we didn't know what HIV was, right? So this is a way back a ways, but when we started seeing people come in with these, clusters of symptoms, but we didn't really have a disease process at that time. So a lot of the early work of HIV and the writing, there were no data that preceded it. So the people who wrote about it, the physicians I'm thinking of, and the nurses as well, used a lot of case-based or anecdotal experience when things were less known. When we talk about COVID and rates, like death rates or infection rates, sometimes we have to go a little far afield and away from the gray media, not gray literature, and into media, but you always want to take the source when you're reading a statistic, right? We talked a lot about like pseudoscience, so we don't want to go down that road. So we have to think about, some studies, you may have a lot of research. If it's a topic, I had a student who was working on traumatic brain injury and ways to use rehabilitation with persons who've had a traumatic brain injury. And there was a lot of research, right? So she's pulling from a rich, deep well of research. And then, what happens if you're looking at something? Now we have a lot of published studies about COVID, but early on, if you can't find any information in the traditional literature, or if you're looking at, long haulers, long-term COVID, you may have to reach out to Gray Lit, or you may have to reach out to other sources like media, or, preferably clinical experience, but you'll cite it. And then when the reader reads it, they'll know that source as well. And if we look here, right, this is a more medical way of citation. So this is not APA, but this happens a lot in research grants. So when you write grants, you may see superscripts, right? These scripts up here. And they usually are used because they save space in a journal. So if you say Smith and Smith 2021, you're taking space. So it's a way to save space. So if you think about it, all of these research, what this researcher is doing in this sense here, right? They are taking a lot of the preceding literature and putting themselves in it. So access is a key component of high quality care, naturally. Excessive wait times, especially for surgery, are cited as a weakness of publicly funded healthcare system. Another citation. Previous studies have suggested that even in a system with universal access, socioeconomic status may affect care, right? Here they cite one study. I would tell you, be a critical research reviewer. If they say previous studies, why is there one? And often I get this when I'm reviewed. You say previous studies, there's one. We can cite many studies that talk about socioeconomic SES differences in access to care. We all know that. Such barriers to care might further disadvantage a vulnerable segment of the population at risk for elevated morbidity and mortality. Here they're citing multiple studies. And we know that, right? We always use words like marginalized, susceptible, vulnerable. Think about what we mean when we say that, right? But what are the factors, or what are the barriers that are putting some groups at even extensive risk, right? Intersectional or combined risk for negative health outcomes, either more sickness and or death. Lower SES has been associated with lower cancer survival rates, they're citing. Access to cardiac procedures, greater mortality after stroke or MI, and access to same-day surgery. So we want to know that when people make statements, they're justified. So in their opening, they're justifying and showing that they know there's existing knowledge. Again, just be mindful, previous studies, only one. I'd like to see 3-6 or something like that. Right, if we look here, right, occurrence and family impact of elopement in children with autism spectrum disorders. And what do we have, right? This is the anecdotal account. So this, at the time that Dr. Anderson wrote this maybe was a new field, or a field where this information was not particularly available. So she's using anecdotal accounts to begin the study and to kind of ground her study. And then she's going beyond and saying what her study adds. Right, so, I'm sorry. So both of these are ways of grounding your research and beginning your introduction using your lit review. Now, this is what I was telling you, that a lit review can also be a type of study, right? So one of the articles you'll read, and I'll pull it up in a second, or maybe a little bit later, I'll put it up later for you, that you're going to review it, and it doesn't have a hypothesis, it doesn't have a research question. What it has is, it's like a summary, synopsis, or it condenses all existing information. It's a tertiary review. And these are beautiful in the way that, let's say you want to study social support or trauma response or recovery times post, name the procedure, you can find a literature review that somebody's done and published, and it will include a lot of information you need about that topic, which is excellent, right? So it grounds you and it brings you right in, so you know what has been done before with that topic. And there are 3 types. And I don't want you to get hung up on the difference, but I'll explain it and we'll see like kind of where we need to go with it. But they are kind of what they sound. So a scoping review, if you hear it, we'll cover it. We can go and talk about it a little bit later, but right now we're going to do narrative review, systematic, or meta-analysis. So if we look at a narrative review versus a systematic, a narrative review is just talking about a topic and bringing in literature. So somebody did a literature search in the library, found some articles that they found were good, gave a good discussion of the topic they're interested in, and then they wrote about it, right? In their method, they must say like how they selected the articles and why they selected them, but it's not formal. It's less formal. So we're going from less formal to more formal and then the most formal. A systematic review really is very, very structured. It keeps track of all of the articles, so the number of articles initially searched. It looks at every aspect of the article. You'll often see a flow chart. It will compare, it will talk about inclusion and exclusion criteria, and it's considered a little less prone to bias because why? Because the author is talking about their process, and you can see where in a narrative review, they might generally tell you how they searched for articles, but in the systematic review, they're telling you, I searched PubMed, used the term age, asterisk, or whatever it is. Here's what I found. I excluded articles that were in French or published earlier than 1990. Right, so a little bit less bias, but there's always some bias, right? There's some bias that probably can creep in. Why? Because you're the one selecting the articles and deciding if they make the cut and they go in your review or if they don't. A meta-analysis is it's like, remember we talked about the gold standard? So a meta-analysis is really the kind of the gold standard. It's very difficult to do because you need to have the quantitative ability and you need to have software and skills to do it. So it's not just searching and doing a summary of what you found. You're actually taking aspects of each article and looking at them for heterogeneity, how they're different, and homogeneity, how they're similar. And you're doing a concurrent Q, you're getting a score that says this is how much the articles are similar and this is how much these articles are different. So you're quantifying the similarities and differences in the articles, and you're coming up with these summary statistics from pooled statistics, meaning you are quantifying the articles, right? You're quantifying different aspects. So what were the sample sizes? What were the significance of results? All those different things. And so a lot of people say, when you're looking for lit reviews to read, try to look for a meta-analysis or systematic review. Or when you're writing it up, you could say, in their systematic review and meta-analysis, Schneider and colleagues have found, and then the reader will know that the information you're finding is from the systematic meta review. Again, more rigorous, have statistical skills. You need to really be good at tracking, be good at searching databases, have systematic processes, and it is definitely doable, but it has to be something that meets the goal that you're seeking. So what do? Lit reviews are something we all do. And again, I'm going to promote Carrie Price. I think everyone should meet with her and really talk about ways of finding your research topic and then finding information that really suits what you're looking for. Or we can do it during office hours. I'd love to do some searching with you all. In the second video I make, I'm going to bring in the 2 assignments that you're doing in terms of research. So I'll bring that up again. But it's just it's fun. I think literature review is fun because you might think of a topic and think, oh, nobody's ever studied this. And when you do the lit review, you're like, wow, so many people have studied this in ways I never thought of. Or maybe, you know, things are missing, right? I can do this better. So the first thing you do is you use keywords to search. Then you kind of sort through. It's like you know, sifting through which articles are helpful. You could look at if you're not sure if the article is a good journal, you could look at the impact factor. You could look at the SJR remember from last class and say, is this legit, right? This sounds kind of sketchy. Let me double check and see if this journal is from a quality, if this article is from a quality journal. We look at the abstract, right? We read the abstract first and say, does this fit? It's a great topic about, you know, the role of social media in healthcare practices, but it was done in Sweden. So is that relevant to my population, right? And then we organize the information. You can do it however you wish. Some people take notes in Word. Some people print the articles and write on it. What's the information from that particular journal that you're going to use in your lit review? And then you write, right? We just write it out. Hardest part, put something together, do a draft, and then we cite in APA style. And again, APA style, I'm not the APA style wizard or guru. There are a lot of links in this week's course module. So I gave you a link here, and I'll show you all of these. So I'm in Towson. And I'm sorry, I'm in Cook Library at Towson. I'm very sorry. So in research guides, you can look by your subject, and we have many subjects. I always go to gerontology, but you can find whichever, we can go to allied health, right? If we all share allied health, resources for research, databases, and resources. Let's see, resources, interdisciplinary databases, up comes PubMed. Let's see what's going on in PubMed. Oh, sorry. This is actually very good because you need to sign in, right? That we're fortunate that we have access, to these journals. Because if we don't have access to the university, they're quite expensive. So you can explore advanced as well. Let's say we're doing, okay, let's do health here. And if we do everything in, let's just do add. Ooh, hey, what was my term? Let's do quality. I'm sorry if this is your topic or not your topic. I'm just stuck in quality now. Okay. Search. Once we search, we can define our terms. Okay. Ooh, yow. What is quality improvement and how can we transform it? So that's interesting to me, but I want to have you take a step back. We want to look at a bunch of stuff here. So we don't want to go all the way from 1944. Let's say we want to go, I mean, we usually start 5 years, but you can keep continually reset this. So let's just say 17 for the sake of books and documents. We would like, gives you everything clinical trial. So we'll leave everything in here. I would like to get out books though. So let's do this. And you guys have probably done this many times, so forgive my clicking, but let's click around. And we click a little more. And we could do additional filters, so you can explore. Let's see. So in language, let's see, age, journal, if you want to define that, I'm going to cancel that for right now. So what it's doing is it's bringing up, it lowered the results a bit. And so we may want to, let's just go a little further in time here. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go, let's say 19. I'm making it really, really tight in terms of time. Quality and ethics in healthcare, digitization. So look at this. Wow. So let's say that, I'm writing a literature, my research topic is looking at quality in healthcare or quality improvement. So I may want to check this out because it's got 6 Sigma systematic reviews, which is hard to say, but it's pretty neat. So again, read the abstract. So widely used in the healthcare sector. This is a quality control protocol. Let's see, 3 databases. So it's talking about this one particular protocol. If we want to find it, let's see, I don't know if Towson has it. Come on, interwebs. So you can request it from interlibrary loan, email the citation, and you could request it. I'm not going to request it because it will be sent to me, but I'll just show you. If you request it, the great part is everything should be loaded in here. Oops. Oh, it's a book request. That's why. Okay. So it's saying it might take longer. It's a book. So you may want to go back and then just investigate other articles, right? Check out some more stuff. Let's go back. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. Language barrier between nurses and patients, a scoping review. People, interesting. Look at this. People, systems, and safety, resilience, and excellence in healthcare practices, right? And it's a free article. We could check that. Outlines the development of the 3 ages of safety. Might suit what you're interested in, might not. But just some ways to search. So the way that I got here is definitely from Towson Libraries, and then I went to subject guides and I did allied health. So check it out. Right. Again, we evaluate. So we look at it. What does this article tell us? A data-informed approach to targeting social determinants of health as the root causes of COVID-19 disparities. Okay, right, long academic title. We see that he submitted it or she submitted it and then edited it and it got published. Okay. Attention to addressing racism, diverse drivers of inequities have been debated, right? Essential and medical vision, right? We have citations. For those in the public health community, the importance of addressing both upstream and downstream social determinants of health to achieve equity has been long recognized. Yet the COVID pandemic has highlighted the stark underinvestment in employment opportunities, education, housing, and other social determinants of health in disadvantaged communities, right? So we see syndemic are 2 pandemics at the same time. So the syndemic for them is COVID and other disadvantaged communities or that result in cumulative disadvantage. So anytime you say syndemic, it's 2 things that occur. So like HIV and TB are a syndemic, COVID with another pandemic or another endemic or another social determinant of health can be a syndemic. So here we see, right, we'd like to read more to investigate this, but they're citing and they're talking about key issues. American Journal of Public Health, I know the ranking, but you could look it up. It's very good. It's a credible source. So again, when you have all your articles, right, printed out as I do, right, I came up printing, or sometimes they do it online. It just depends, right, how I feel like reading, right? Where do the articles fit? who wrote it, what are their qualifications, right? The American Journal of Public Health versus a journal that may have a low impact factor or SJR. Is it peer reviewed or refereed? How did they do the study? Did they do a systematic lit review, a meta-analysis? Did they do case studies? You know, how many people did they interview? Was their methodology relevant? And then how recent, right? There's a big firewall. So I'm writing stuff about COVID and publishing it now that we did in 2020, 2021. It's 2022. It may not get published till 2023. So is the time that somebody's writing about something, is that relevant to your research? And then who do they cite, right? Whenever you're interested in getting more articles on a topic, you can always, 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 always go to the reference list and read some of the references. It's a really good source to find others. And then, you know, we always say the closer to the data, the better. Is it a primary article where somebody conducted the research themselves? Is it secondary where they're quoting somebody else or they're using other data? Or is it tertiary? Is it a lit review, right? And we say that it's always better to use primary. So think about why. And then you got to summarize and organize. So make an outline. You may need to abstract or summarize your articles. What I tend to do is get the citation in APA style, and underneath it, I just bullet point the key pieces of information I'm going to use from that article. Some people do a table. If you like Excel, you can do author, date, and then the topics covered in columns, and you can type that out and use that. You know, it depends on how you're gonna use them, but find an organizational way to track the information. And right, tips and tricks, which you all know, right? Try to find a good article or a good quality review, like a meta-analysis, a narrative analysis, well, narrative, systematic or meta, and then find those references. As I said before, if someone's writing a really great article and you're really interested in that topic, see who they're citing, because odds are that that citation may really work for you too. And then I'm doing this as well. I'm writing a book, finishing up a book about, you know, the meaning of place for older adults. What does home mean? What does place mean? And my references stop 2021. So I'm hustling to get 2022, 2023. So I'm looking forward, but also somebody might say, well, you know, who developed this concept? You're talking about this one procedure or this one kind of outcome or intervention. So go back and say who did it, right? So the functional independence measure, who did it? Who created it, right? You may need older references as well. And then right. The lit review is never going to be perfect when you first write it. It's going to take a lot of time. You know, you have to cite and you have to give the reader the source of information. So you let us know what you're reading, what articles have come before you, and then where you situate yourself in the research. And APA style, right? This should be a hanging indent. So I'll show you. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back to the slides. Let's go here. I just want to show you this is a hanging indent. I can do it in Word. I don't know if it'll let me do a hanging indent in PowerPoint. Let's see. So this probably be because I want to do, there's paragraph, home, paragraph, where is hanging indent? Oh, heading, font, agency. It won't let me do it. What we can do is this. We would like an indent. Okay, now we're getting in better APA style. Right, so this is an in-text citation. You want to cite the author or authors if it's a group, and you want to cite the year. If it's a direct quote, you want to cite a page. And then in APA style, which you'll see in all the listings I've given you, it's in sentence case, the title, and this is a book, but you're listing authors, year, title and sentence case, and then source. Location of source, I'm sorry. These are the guides, and I will show you briefly, but Towson has a full APA guide, in-text citations, that will give you everything you need. Books, articles, websites, and examples. And you can also chat. So if you're citing and you're getting, stuck, you can always chat. I'm not going to chat, sorry. The librarians will be like, okay. Let's see, let me go back. Oops, sorry, let me get back. Oh, sorry. Let me screen share. So I want to go here. Let me just see. Okay. Let me go back. Okay. So we fixed this. I just want to go here and I'll show you. I will screen share. Sorry about that. Let me just copy it. Mm-hmm. One second. This is where we began. Right, we end up at the Cook Library, APA Style Guide. Everything you need is here. It's an excellent resource. In-text citations, again, so you can see it. You can chat a librarian if you're struggling for citation style. And I'll show you, let me show you one more. Copy this for you. And this is the OWL at Purdue. I'm sure many of you have seen this as well. It's a good source. I share my screen with you. Again, do not click on the ads. I'm sorry, it's a site, but if you look over here on this, not here. If you look over here on this left-sided column, you'll have more ways to do the same thing. All sorts of citation style, their examples, whatever you need. You have to use what works for you, right? So I show you both Towson and the I showed you both Towson's and Purdue OWL because people care for or like different options. So you have both. They both do the same. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. You're going to do a lit review and you're doing a bunch of stuff with literature and a topic. So I'm going to stop on this slide. And what I want to do is break it up into a separate video where I'm going to compare this research presentation, literature review and research presentation with your article critique. So they're very similar, but they're different. So I want to compare them in a separate video. So hang tight. I'm going to close this video and then I want to present just a comparison of the two research-based assignments you're going to do in class and how they compare and how they contrast. This one would be the research presentation or the article summaries / translation and research presentation. And the other one is an article critique. So one is a critique and one is just summaries and presentation. So stay tuned. I will bring that in the next video.